All right, we are live, it says. I'm going to go ahead and put the link in to the comments. Oops. We'll see if somebody ever jumps on. That would be kind of cool.
Cool. All right. We're back. We're back in
Yeah.
action.
And let me put one more link. It doesn't put it directly on Facebook for some reason. Though I wonder about the usefulness of going live on Facebook anyway.
I think the YouTube's been pretty good for you.
Yeah, the YouTube's great. So we were going to talk about
Trauma, radical undoing.
trauma and the connection between trauma and tension, and then how you can undo that. Let me put this in the comments. Jump on the stream with us. There we go.
While you're doing that, I'd love to kind of mention, this is not my analogy by any means, but I heard this years ago and it makes so much sense. It's like when you're on your computer and you're typing a Word document and then you decide to go to the internet, right? And you pull up that browser. Your Word document's still there in the background, even though your internet screen comes up. And even though you can't see that Word document, it's still sucking on that kind of the energy of the computer. It's still draining that battery. And I think that that's such an analogy kind of for trauma, or let's just say overwhelming emotional events. They happen, they come up, life moves on, and then they just get stuck in the background, lodged in our body, lodged in these, tension patterns, and we may not be aware of them because they're so unconscious, but they usually are what causes diseases and illnesses and sicknesses and emotionally neurotic patterns or triggers, and they're running in the background like that Word document would be. So it's like, even though we're on YouTube browsing the internet, that's still running. So it's kind of like those traumas are still there. And it's like, how do we get them out? Well, we have to go into the body because they're so unconscious. And
Yeah, and there's kind of like a popular myth that's taken as true that you can somehow talk or think your way out of those things. Now, maybe there's a few people I've come across where they found their way out of the trap of the world of words and the world of living in the past and clinging to that trauma through learning logic and reason, and applying it like brutally to their life situation. But it wasn't in the context of therapy usually. It was in the context of learning, logic and reason, and then applying that to their own life experience. But that's pretty rare and also difficult.
Right. What's that? I think it was an Einstein. It was either an Einstein quote or someone else, but it was something like, if you're trying to solve the problem from the same level of thought that kind of created it, right? It's like, well, if you're trying to logically get out of it, you're never going to get it out of an emotional problem from a logical perspective. And it seems like, and a lot of these body therapies talk about this, the whole idea of a mind-body split, right? But
Yeah.
It seems like in our world, we've just completely fucking split the mind and the body. It's like, well, mental health. Well, what is this whole unit that we're in, right? And I think that's where radical undoing really comes in, is we're honoring that there is a mental component, but we're going at it through the body.
Yeah, the mental component is where things are locked up. There was this line I thought of from Modest Mouse. It was like, language is a liquid that we're all dissolved in. Great for solving problems after it creates a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because problems are like a formulation, you want to be somewhere else. You want to go do, it's like the definition of problems would have to be You have expectations of things to go a certain way, and then they go a different way. Otherwise, how would you define problem? You have to have a set expectation first.
right? Or in some ways, it's kind of like the battle of the conscious or the unconscious, right? We're lodged in these patterns that keep repeating themselves, and then we consciously say, "Well, I want to be different," but we're locked in such a loop that there is that kind of that war between these unconscious ingrained patterns and what we consciously want.
No.
What have you noticed in the, 20 years in, really exploring yourself, knowing your patterns, undoing a lot of it, becoming a different person. Um, I mean, there's things I'm sure you're doing now that you didn't even think were possible 20 years ago because of fear, because of anxiety or limitation. So, what's that been like for you to change on such a deep level that the same guy that stepped into the Hyatt class is not the same guy sitting here in Croatia, right? It's like they're literally two different people.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to even try to wrap my mind around it. Because I am aware of something that seems constant. That's not the personality. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Something that's like if I ask you or anyone watching, if you, and God forbid this happens to anyone, but if you like lost one of your arms, are
Right.
you still you? If you lost both your arms, are you still you? If you lost your arms and your legs, are you still you? There's this you-ness,
Hmm.
before, prior to even the name that you're given. And at least from what I can tell in my own life, when you're 3 years old, 4 years old, there's that you-ness, huh? And then 5 and 10 and 20 and 30, you know? There's something. Does that ring true to you?
Yes, I mean, some people would call that sense of presence, or we can give it a bunch of spiritual terms, but there is a sense of existence beyond the personality, the story. So you're
And
saying
beyond time, yeah.
and you're saying there's more of an identification with that than your body, your story, your emotions. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, I'd say I'm more aware of that, whereas I lost track of that underneath all the vagaries of the personality. So this
Right.
ties back to like so-called trauma, and like I said, I don't like the word, but I understand what it means, and it's useful actually. It's just that people have been trained to wear their so-called trauma as kind of a badge of honor, or join groups based on the flavor
Right.
or style of trauma they've experienced, which I don't think really serves people to get free of it. But the connection between trauma and tension, and trauma, a lot of times what happens when people are kids, it's not even that it was some crazy experience, like some crazy overwhelming physical beating or whatever, but it can be like you got yelled at and felt like, and you know that, like your sister spills a glass of milk and your mom thought you did it, started screaming at you, and you got punished, and you never had a chance to explain yourself, and you felt like fuck. But you're relying on those people for your survival, so you have to just eat it. You know what I mean? Choke down that experience, and then add that up with millions of those
And then
experiences.
you're 50 and you go, why the fuck can I not express myself? You know what I mean?
No.
And it's like, well, but that just to pause you, just I want to make a point. That is kind of like, and the science and the psychological world gives that the term developmental trauma, which I think most of us have a lot more developmental trauma than we do big T trauma. So big T is more of
Yeah.
your car accidents, your if you were raped, once or twice, those are specific events. Big kind of things versus the bullying or the parent not being able to love or shutting you down. That's the stuff that's subtle, and people don't call it trauma, But I do think if we can define it, we can understand it and work with it, right? As opposed to having no idea where to even start.
Well, to boil it all down, what if you can remember or try to remember what it was like when you were a little kid? Now, some people never even had this except in the womb, I guess. It could have been so loud and intense even what before they were born, but that's a little more rare, thankfully. But if you remember what it was like to explore, like without fear, to just be curious and open to existence. One example from my own life was when I was, I must have been like 2.5 because my sister was a little baby. And we were in northern Minnesota where my dad and mom had a cabin. They were just finishing building. It's like a house actually, but he called it the cabin. Near this lake. And it was all, I don't know how it is now, but it was all pretty wild around there. He and a few other guys were just starting to build houses on it. And my sister was a little baby, and I can remember them hanging out and talking, and probably focused on my sister. She was somewhat newborn. And then I just decided I was leaving. I was going to go home, and that would have been Minneapolis. So it was like 6 hour drive. And I just walked off into the woods. And I don't remember feeling upset or anything. I just had this sense like, I can still see this memory and feel it. It's like the woods around me. And I just knew that I was going home and that I was totally fine, that I would be totally fine, that there was nothing bad that could happen. And it wasn't like that I was just stupid and didn't know. It was really a knowing that everything was fine. And then I must have gotten pretty far down the road. And then this one-eyed, kind of mangled-faced garbage man came and picked me up. Because they know everybody out there. And put me in the front of the garbage truck with him and brought me back to my parents. I don't know if there's a metaphor in there, but I remember, the thing I remember the most was feeling so relaxed and at peace that I just knew that I was fine. And then later, during some of the times when I was hitchhiking, that's when I really remembered that original time when I was like 3, let's say, of running away and knowing that I was fine. And then at some points while I was hitchhiking, when it seemed like everything was just messed up, but I knew somehow everything would be fine. And then it would be like crazy things would happen out of nowhere, similar to the garbage man coming and just rescuing me without me even asking for help or thinking I needed help. Like one time hitchhiking, and there was maybe there were airplane surveillance. That's all I can think of. But on the road in somewhere in Indiana, and there was a storm coming in, and I was sitting on the side of the road. There was just no cars around. It was like forever. And I usually would walk, but there was just nothing in sight even. Nowhere to even set up a tent in view. And, excuse me. And I just sat down at the side of the road and put my head down, and it was hot, and the storm was coming in, and leaning on my big backpack. And no cars went by, nothing. I did not hear a plane or see a plane or anything. And then suddenly I see in the distance and hear like an ambulance coming. And then a police car behind it, and they had their lights on and all this, and I was just kind of interested. But at that moment when I sat back, I had given up. I was like, well, there's nothing I can do right now. I don't have a phone. Like, there's nothing to do besides just be here. And then I looked up, and then the ambulance came rushing up, and they stopped right next to me with the police car. And earlier in that day, I'd cut my hand. That's a whole other story, but my hand was bleeding. And I asked them, like, hey, if you're here, can you patch this up? And they did. And I asked them for a ride. They said, oh, we had reports that someone was dead on the side of the road. Yeah. And I'm like, reports? Like, from who? From where? There was, you know what I mean? There was no one around, and I would have heard a car go by, for sure. And really, it was like a death and rebirth kind of experience. And then I said, well, can I get a ride somewhere, anywhere, next stop, whatever? And they're like, no, not in the ambulance, but the guy driving the cop car is retired. They just have him drive to keep a car out here I'm sure he'll help you out. And the guy's like, oh, if you were my son, I'd want someone to help you. And he drove me to a rest stop and dropped me off under a sign that said hitchhiking prohibited. And he's like, you'll get a ride out of here, no problem. And then I did and kept going. But that related back to that earlier experience. And during the time hitchhiking, that was before I found the undoing work, but I was confronted with situations where it was out of my control what was going to happen, like completely out of my control what would happen next. I mean, I guess I could run into there were no woods, but I could run into the field or go find a house, you know. So it wasn't like I was literally dying, but there were situations where I didn't know what was going to happen next for long stretches of time, and something would sort of dawn on me that I would remember that everything was fine, no matter how it looked. That I didn't have to know what was going to happen next to know that I'd be okay. And that sense is what people tend to remember when they do the radical undoing session. They remember it, and you see it on their face. It's a totally different shape of their face, of their eyes, of the way that they're communicating everything. Now they'll forget it again real fast, you know, like they go back home and open some bills and then they're right back to it. And there's a story in the Bible, in the Old Testament, that was like a slight jab since you told me that you grew up Jewish. So I'll call it Old Testament instead of Hebrew Bible. Just to, I'm playing though. I like somewhat deep Bible humor, but religious humor. But anyway, the story when the Israelites or when the slaves are freed from Egypt and they're wandering in the desert, they haven't made it to the Holy Land yet, and God is telling them, hey, you'll get everything you need at the end of each day. There's going to be manna from heaven on the plants. You scrape it up and eat it. You know, don't run off. Like, don't save it for the next day. Don't run off and freak out and think I'm not going to take care of you. You know. And then people would inevitably run off and freak out, and then the earth would open up and they die or whatever, you know. But they would freak out and start to try to save up the food, thinking they weren't going to have it the next day. But it was trying to teach that that you can have that level of faith. And then we see in the New Testament too, like I think in Matthew, the Sermon on the Mount. If you look at the birds and bees and animals, and they're not storing up like food in barns, you know, and in bank accounts and all this, and yet they're fine. And how are we, as the image of God, to expect anything less, you know?
I think what you're saying, just to tie it in a little bit, and I agree with this, the trauma responses, or we can call them the stress responses, that 99.9% of the planet goes into all the time, right, kind of all day, every day, is we try to figure out how to be okay. And then we usually try to point that out into the world, and we need money and shelter and food and water and all that stuff, but there is a general sense of unease based on these things lodged into our body. And I've noticed this in myself. General sense of unease.
Oops, sorry. Go on.
I've noticed this in myself, and I've seen this especially in our Sunday sessions. Everyone just starts to drop, and there is a sense of total okayness with life as it is, and a total ability to trust. And I do think in that we can call it we can call it God, or we can call it kind of a spiritual sense. Kind of starts to open up, if we want to give it words, right? Of this sense of connection to something greater than ourselves or oneself, and a sense of total ease with the way that things are. And that's something that this work kind of points back to, is whatever's lodged in the body starts to dissolve. There's a sense of quietness and trust, and then it's like, oh, I can go walk around the planet and be okay. I don't have to hold myself up for dear life and try to control everything. So I really do think a spiritual dimension, or I call it a higher consciousness, but they're all words, but they're good words, right? But something like that does start to open up. with this work. Um, yeah, something does open up, and you did say that you get it, and then you kind of go back into pattern, and I think that that's even important. I think we have to go back and forth because then there's a point where you are in pattern or you're out of pattern and you're aware of both. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, fear has arisen in my chest. I can watch it and allow it, or I'm totally free in my chest. I can watch it and allow it, and I don't even need to prefer one or the other. They're both allowed.
It's kind of the opposite of how people conceive of hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
That's another interesting topic because all language could be thought of as a form of hypnosis if you're going to define it properly. All communication. But Hyatt used to say also that you've got to get people out of the trance first. They have to know that they're even in a trance.
Right.
So to know that you're in a trance, you have to know what it is to not be in one. So for me, the radical undoing experience is also that, where you're outside of a trance state, meaning your mind is grounded where the body is. They're in the same place, and the mind's not off on some other timelines, running around and fantasizing and wishing and regretting and all this other stuff.
Did you ever read Power Now?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that, what's his name? Eckhart Tolle looks like a turtle somehow.
Right. Well, he has.
I'm not putting down turtles or him.
No,
I'm
no,
just
no,
saying.
no. He has, my sense is, a very deep sense of presence, but probably hasn't done the body work. But I just wanted to point back to that book for a sec, because in some ways, radical undoing is a embodied way. The whole book is essentially talking about watching what comes up in awareness, thoughts, emotions, being the observer, and then stepping out of the trance of identifying with all your thoughts and stuff. But this work, each time you finish a session, there is a sense of, oh wait, I'm watching. That's kind of like what we do sense and feel, right? I'm watching the thoughts, I'm watching the body, I'm watching the emotions. And it's an embodied way of pointing back to that, which in some sense, I think that's what all these spiritual teachings are trying to point to. But they just say, be the watcher, or follow the breath, or be aware of the space between the breath. But that doesn't break these patterns and create nearly as much space as this body work.
Well, that's the issue we've talked about a bunch of times. That world of words is like people are bound into it, and so then all the words that come in, no matter how true they are, or how true whatever they're referring to is, they become part of the web, you know. So even the words find the focus on the space between the breaths now becomes a directive, and then the mind uses that and abuses the person. Oh, you're not doing this right, you know. What do you mean the space between the breath, you know? So then it becomes wrapped up in that same world of words. And you might have heard people mentioning on some of the sessions lately, on the weekly sessions, how that thing we call silent presence, you know, where you become aware of the hands and the feet, the arms and legs. We could do that on the stream today. We can do some exercises and then that. But how people have been experiencing that or trying to experience that for like 6 months or longer. And then suddenly, maybe the last few sessions, you might have noticed people had said, this time I was able to like totally understand what that is. Like, and then before that, they thought they kind of understood. And then they thought, well, I'm just watching myself trying to do it. And then suddenly there's this access like that opens up, like where you can actually see the thoughts and see them drop away. And that when you are aware of that, then who you are is not the thoughts any longer. It has to be the case because now you're seeing them. You're not creating them, and you'll know that you're not creating them. So that should disabuse everyone of this idea of positive and negative thinking and all this. Now, I will say there are powerful mindsets and attitudes that you should have going into this kind of thing, like like persistence, determination, perseverance. And overcoming is like a sense of urgency, or having an expectation about how you're supposed to change and what you're supposed to live up to. Those are powerful mindsets. But what it means to have a mindset is to tend to your awareness in the present, not to sit and have a script or any of this kind of stuff. But there's no way to sit and catalog good, positive, and negative thoughts, and that's another trap people get into. It becomes super complicated, and then they're judging themselves for something that they're not in control of. Oh, why is this thought coming up again? And then taking ownership of it.
There's so many levels, and I think at the end of the day, like, it really comes down to opening up the body, embodying this shit, because that's the one thing in spirituality, right? We talked about, I think before the call, the mind-body split. I think a little bit on the call, the mind-body split. A lot of spirituality is just stuck in the mind. So people are really open, but they don't feel their fucking body. They don't feel their anger. There's no emotional, there's no integration of emotions. And I think you miss out on that deeper stillness, and you miss out on that. We have to have that human connection as well, or we have to have an embodied human experience. So I think one of the quickest ways to do this is your weekly sessions. I mean, usually, right, people start off with maybe a one-on-one and work with you for a month and get the hang of it, but then it really just comes down to, it doesn't matter what the fuck we say on here, it just comes down to experiencing it.
No.
You want to share a little more, because I'm sure people are watching this that, they've seen the newsletters and say, well, I've got a weekly session. So what is that like? I mean, I can share my experience, but give us more from your,
I don't know. Maybe it's more valuable for you to share your experience, because I think I get repetitive about it, and I don't really know exactly what pieces to focus on. I guess what I would say is, yeah, it's useful for people to work with me one-on-one at first, so they can get the hang of all the movements, like some of the more complicated ones, and get the hang of the breathing, and I can focus on that specific person and their body and their issues. And then once that's flowing smoothly, then we can get on the weekly sessions, and it seems to go pretty well. And there is some group effect there where maybe it's easier to jump on and do the work together or something, than it would be to just do it alone.
I do think there's this sense of accountability, right? And I do think there's a group component. Yeah. Are you still offering, I know at one point you were doing one-on-ones. I think you're offering that through like the end of the year, or what's that?
Yeah, that's what it looks like for now. And I think I'll wait until January to do another intensives, just because Christmas is coming up and stuff. But I'd like to put together another online group for that and test out some new, make it a little shorter or easier to complete. I mean, the best possible way for a person to go through this stuff would be to do the 30 or 28-day intensive, experience 4 sessions guided live, and then 4 sessions done with video, so they can do a second one during the week, and then to do that morning routine every single day to really go deep with everything. And the morning routine changes each week, and then to do the one adventure every single day. There's so many layers built into that. I won't go into a lot of depth, but there's 4 milestones, of that experience. And the first is 100% acceptance, so you can actually finally get clear on where you are and who you are and what's going on. And then the second week is coming home to the body, which happens after 100% acceptance. And then ending the fake suffering or the suffering of the mind, which is endless and infinite, and then realizing there's nothing to live up to, meaning to destroy these standards that you've created or other people have created for you. Now you might find your way to a morality that's grounded in the belief in God or something like that, but to get there, you got to get all this other shit out of the way. And again, that's why it's undoing. But the adventure level of stuff where you might do a drawing, or you might experiment with music or singing or chanting, or like writing a letter to yourself and mailing it and opening it, establishing a new way of communicating with other humans, forgiving your parents, directly. So many layers built in there where there's things, once you've done it, they're done forever. Your perspectives will change about everything forever. And then after completing that month, or private sessions with me for a month, then when you jump on the weekly sessions, it's going to be really easy to keep going and to keep overcoming all the different chronic tensions. And there'll be less and less and less tension. And then people stick around because it's fun, it's enjoyable. There's something pretty deep just about checking in with that group each week. And it's not something where there's like we're not meeting because of a belief system. You know what I mean? We're not meeting under specific tenets of like, we don't have shared opinions about, you know what I mean? How most groups of humans become kind of culty or something. And I've noticed that that's distinctly absent in this group. There's nothing that's like specifically binding us together besides that we do this body movement breathing thing each week.
And everyone's experience is different.
No.
And it's not about adding anything. It's not like we're going to a seminar to add something to ourselves or get a new belief system. It's like, at least my experience is I notice something chips away every week. I don't always know what it is, but there's something that chips away. And I will say that 100% yes, and not living up to standards and ending the fake suffering, those pillars, I don't even think you have to add them to the belief system.
Right, exactly.
I think that they naturally happen as a result of the work. The more you undo, the less you have to live up to anything. And then you even have awareness of subtle ways you're still living up to things. And then they fall away. And it's cool because we're kind of taking the power out of a coach or a mentor, and we're putting it back into the hands of the individual and saying, what is your experience on this planet with your body? And let's help you reach in that and figure out who you are outside of whatever the fuck you think you need to be.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the only way that any religious or spiritual inquiry could even begin, if you think about it. Everything else would be based on belief and ideas,
Should we do a couple exercises? I think it would be good for anyone new watching. There are a couple foundational exercises that Garrett likes to do. I think these probably are good to be done daily. And, you may notice your whole world change after 5 minutes, and you may notice a little shift, but it does compound and build over time. And then you kind of look back and you go, wow, like you can really see how you've changed and how your deep embedded personality changes over time. So what would you like to do in regards to some of the exercises?
Well, let's do, as always, the face stretches.
Sure. Let's give a little context, though. I mean, I know we've talked about it, but why are we stretching our face? Why are we moving everything? Just as brief as you could, but let's give everyone.
Because people, the face and the brain, there's a lot of brain matter monitoring the face, and so it reads like various states, and then categorizes those states as problematic or upsetting or something to be afraid of or something to be happy about, whatever. And then our faces end up frozen in like a really limited array of muscle contractions.
Right.
So what we're doing is breaking that apart so you can get back to neutral. There's even words that we have like fresh face, you know, put a fresh face on it. Yeah, so the face gets kind of frozen, and you can see it on really old people, where if they've been disgusted at other people their whole life, this is kind of raised up, like a big, huge wrinkle there. The various ones, but the idea is that you're projecting all these emotional states outward, and other people are treating you certain ways based on that, and then you're not actually present to what's really going on. So we break the face apart to again become present to what's really going on, to not be projecting emotions outward, and then to be aware of what's going on for the people around us and the situations around us. You know, that's some basics about it. There's a lot more to it than that, but.
And you and I have talked before. A lot of us have a mask, and I used to have this extremely fake smile.
Can you duplicate it now?
That's really hard. Man, that's really hard. Hang on. Something like
Yeah,
that.
without the eyes getting involved. Yeah, like rather
Right.
than like.
But it was something like it didn't feel genuine, and it was kind of like it showed up a lot in social situations or even on camera back in the day. It would show up, and I became aware, and we've talked, and I think anyone in the world that has some awareness of themselves can resonate. We go into these patterns thinking, going back to your point, we have to be something or someone to get love, because that's usually how we grew up. So looping back to that developmental trauma, usually there was a lack of unconditional love, and it was be this way, do this, don't do this. The love was either pulled away or given very situationally. So we formed this entire persona. And the face exercises over time, what I've noticed, and I've even had people tell me this, and I'm like, this is the best fucking compliment you could ever give me. Someone I met recently said, "You're just yourself." And I really attributed it to this work because there's less for me to hold up. I'm like, I don't really care if you like me or not. I can just be myself. That is so fucking powerful. Like before this work, that didn't exist. And in some sense, one of the biggest things that attributed to that was breaking down all this armor in my face. So I think for anyone like watching, as you do the exercises, you'll notice that you show up in social situations more relaxed. You're not trying to get something from someone. You're not trying to be something for someone. You just show up as yourself. But it takes time. I mean, I think it takes doing this sometimes 3 times a day for 2 to 3 minutes at a time over several months, and then you start to become aware of a deeper way of being, where you just show up and you're like, okay, I'm here. So, anything you want to add to that?
Well, there's lots of things I could say, but no, I think let's just do it. Let's do the face.
Do you want to break down really quick what to do?
Yeah, so anybody watching now or later, you want to just stretch and move every single part of your face. So that includes the eyebrows, the forehead, eyebrows, eyeballs, different directions, eyelids open, closed, cheeks, nostrils, lips, tongue, jaw, everything. And move with a lot of intensity. So meaning move against the contractions. So contract all the muscles as much as you can. And move against that contraction slowly. So a lot of people go too fast. And then you need to breathe. So you breathe into your belly, into your chest, and then relax. Not relax, excuse me. Then let all the breath out. Relax the diaphragm, relax the chest. But just continue stretching, moving the face. So again, the keys are. Go ahead.
It's just amazing how, like, at least for me, 8 months ago, this was all so locked up, and it moves so much more fluidly.
Yeah, it is kind of amazing how things change over time.
It is kind of cool to be able to watch your own progress. You know what I mean?
I remember in massage school, the teacher happened to be into like some orgone or Reiki and stuff, and he knew that I was in school not so much for massage, but to learn about the body and to do the hands-on stuff, but more for this undoing work.
Hmm.
And he had me give like warm-ups to the class. And I remember a couple people got upset and left the room when we were doing face stretches, and I couldn't understand it at that time. I
Mm.
was like, "What? Like this is so cool." You know, no one was required to do anything, but a couple people got upset and left just at the idea of doing the face stretches.
Mm. Well, it's scary because you start to find what's underneath this mask.
Yeah, there can be a rush of thoughts and emotions and things when you first start doing this, and that's
It's
what might turn people away from it.
kind of like, will you see me, and what will you see? We're fucking terrified as a society to really show ourselves. You know, I mean, I don't. I don't watch much TV, and I don't watch much reality TV. But have you ever seen the show or heard of Love Is Blind?
Somehow it sounds familiar. Someone else might have told me about that. Tell me more.
It's a reality show, and these people are in pods and they're talking to each other, but they can't see each other. And I watched maybe 10 minutes of it last night, and I turned it off. But it was just so interesting. I think when you really know yourself at some level, you can see the ego structure in someone else because we're all trying to build this thing up to be this thing, right? And it's like at some level, I I feel like there are some of us that are trying to take down that mask. It's like, well, fuck it, I don't have to be anybody. I don't need to be anybody. And it was just something about seeing how built up people were and just not in touch with themselves or reality or their body at all. It was, I don't know. It was just it. I think it was such a metaphor of where we're at as a society. We're so disconnected. You know, we're not in tune at all, and that's not real freedom.
Yeah.
I think real freedom is actually taking down the walls that we've built up. But yeah, for anyone watching, if you do these 3 times a day or 3 to 5 minutes, you'll really notice a big shift.
You can break your day into segments that way too. You can take time between classes or events or work shifts or whatever, go to the bathroom or somewhere private and sit and do the face stretch with some breathing. And you'll find that the transitions between different parts of your day are much easier. Okay,
I
so
mean,
next, or actually, let's end it properly. So now make one face, make it really tense. Include the tongue, even if it's just tense inside the mouth. Hold the breath for a second, really squeeze the face, and then say ah and relax. Let everything relax. Let the jaw hang loose, let the eyeballs relax, the muscles around the eyes, and just breathe and be aware.
such a beautiful experience every time I do that.
Yeah, same. brings you back home, present. And not the idea of presence. And now it's all abused, with memes and everything else. Platitudes, duck-billed platitudes. But
but you feel it. It's actually a tangible experience, and I think I've mentioned this. I mean, my day job, I'm in sales, so I'll do this before meetings, and it's amazing because I think the more we take the mask down and we show up, it does give other people permission to show up. I mean, that was like when I first met you, I was blown away. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? 'Cause I sense that you're not holding up any idea of who you need to be. And at that time, I was still holding up so many ideas of who I needed to be. And I was like, wow, I can really learn something. And there's power in this work because you were nothing but yourself. So I really wanted to. I've told you that a million times, but it's true. There's so many people trying to hold up some idea of themselves, and I never got that sense from you. And I was like, okay, fuck, I want that. And I feel like I'm starting to really find that. And it's beautiful and it's cool. But I mean, it's a testament to you because I see a lot of people that are still trying to hold up something, and it's not until you break your own shit down and you're really you that you can really, see in other people, whether they're, because I'm sure you can see in someone whether they're in some fucking egoic mask, right? Or if they're really themselves. You probably feel it or see it at this point.
Yeah, definitely.
Shall we do the shoulders?
Yeah. It's kind of rare to find people outside of that. Yeah, let's do the shoulders.
You want to just give quick context to it? Because there's probably people that haven't done this before.
Yeah, well, when your shoulders are chronically tense, which almost everyone's are, you can just look around for yourself. Then this part of the body sends a message to the brain, basically, that you're having some emergency. Which will then then your conscious awareness will look for an emergency. Isn't that interesting? Now, don't take my word for any of this, but look for yourself. When you feel like there's something that you're scared of, you will look around. If you can just slow yourself down enough to watch, and I'll show you how to do that right after we do this exercise. You'll start to see that you'll have a feeling event. So say, for example, the shoulders are up or some tension in the body as a reaction to something, even a sound or whatever. And then your conscious awareness will start trying to justify the tension in the shoulders by finding something to be afraid of. So then people will think, oh, my relationship's messed up, or my job's messed up, or my this, or my that, or there's something wrong with this house, or whatever it is. And then the brain only needs the tension in the body. That's it. What else can it look to? So it creates its own feedback loop. Let's do it again, because I didn't start with you. So we're trying to level off that sense of emergency. And when it's gone, it's just gone. You're breaking that cycle. So you're not going to be searching for something to be afraid of anymore. You'll just, here's the testament to the cumulative effects. Once you've brought the tension voluntarily up higher than it normally is, right? You're doing it voluntarily and then dropping it off voluntarily so many times. So 2-3 times a day forever. Over time, then when the tension raises up in reaction to whatever, it automatically has a transition back down. You see, because you've done it. You've put it through that transition so many times.
It's essentially creating the ability to contract and relax. And we need both.
So you're deliberately. Now, you could do this with emotions. If somebody's having a really hard time, like they're really sad, you could tell them, okay, I want you to feel that even more intensely. Or one example I used with folks, I had this deck of cards with like 72 different emotional states written on them. You can make your own or you can buy them from my friend. But on the cards, it would have every different thing, rage or indifference or sad or whatever. And we'd play games with those cards. So one set was a deck of gestures, one was a deck of movements, one was a deck of word phrases, like repeated cliched phrases, and one was a deck of emotions. And if you told the person, hey, do this gesture while feeling this emotion, you deal the cards out, no matter what the person was feeling prior to that, then they would look at the card and somehow automatically they would clear out that other emotion they were feeling and then will themselves to feel the new one on the card. And without realizing it, after doing that a bunch of times, over an hour, let's say, some of those people were freed from like 6 months long kind of depressive state. And I didn't know they were experiencing that depressive state, you know? I just was like, let's play with these cards. And then they would do the card, and they told me later, like, dude, I don't know what happened, but I was able to just drop all those bad things I was feeling. So someone's asking, where can I buy the deck of cards? What you want to look for is on thegamecrafter.com. I think that's what it's called. And then look for the Move Act code. Nicholas says on YouTube, and I see a bunch of folks around here. Yeah, the Move Act code. I'll try and find the link later. But Nicholas, if you write me, I think you can do that via YouTube or radicalundoing at Gmail, whatever. I can send you an exact link, but I don't want to do it right now on the stream. So yeah, let's do the exercise.
Let's have everyone. Not maybe hop on, but do it with us.
Yeah, and if folks want to hop on, great, then we can do some more. But so you pull the shoulders up toward the ceiling, up towards your ears, as tight as you can. Be aware if you have injuries and stuff, don't hurt yourself. But otherwise, pull up tight as you can. You can kind of sit up straight or stand up. And then you let your neck be relaxed. Sometimes people will do this, but you just let your neck be relaxed. And you pull them up tight as you can and hold them for at least 1 full minute. And now the keys here is you want to let your arms and hands be relaxed and let the breath flow in and out of the belly and the chest. And shoulders up, nice and tight. Let's see if I can turn this fan down here. I realize how loud that is. Come on.
I could do this one 5 times a day. That's amazing.
Yeah, I like to. You can even hold it for like 5 minutes if you want. We'll go for a little longer than a minute to make sure. But then you just breathe while you're doing it. And one of the keys here is you relax into that intensity. So you can be aware of the intensity. You're going to feel it in your neck and in your shoulders. It might be warm. It might be annoying. It might be upsetting, whatever. But just observe it and relax into it. Don't fight it. And the same can be said for your, private internal suffering. If you can just sit there and stare at it rather than jump up and try to do something about it. It will dissipate. It will go away over time. So continuing to breathe. Stay aware of what you're doing, so eyes open. Then full inhalation. Pull the shoulders up tight, and hold the breath, and hold the shoulders, and really feel the intensity of it. And then we'll count down and thrust them down and say, ah. So 3, 2, 1, and ah. Then after you're finished, it's always good to just take a couple breaths, relax, be quiet. And let's go straight into the silent presence thing. Let's just go right into it. So I'll do it along with everyone. If you're just tuning in, just follow along. You might, and this is something you can do on your own once you figure it out. There's just a few details to keep track of at first. If you do this every morning, every night, it'll get easier and easier. If you add the exercises in before it, it will get even easier and yield more results faster. Nothing magical about this. So you just sit still, and you can have your hands in some relaxed position in your lap or whatever. Close your eyes and let yourself breathe. And then put your awareness on your hands. So just become aware that you have hands. And none of this should be any effort. You just let it happen. So you become aware of the hands. And then become aware that you have feet. So just notice the feet. Now hands and feet at the same time. And then become aware of your arms and hands. So just awareness on the inside of your arms and hands. And then become aware of the legs and the feet. And let go of all the thoughts. I didn't say stop the thoughts, but just let them go. Let go of the past. Let go of the future. Let go of everything. There's nothing you need to hold on to. Just stay right here. Then become aware of the arms, hands, legs, and feet all at the same time. So all of your limbs to the tips of your fingers and toes. And notice the sounds around you. Everything that's happening is a part of the present right now. So just stay here. Then observe the top of the head. Become aware of the head. Let the eyes, the muscles around the eyes relax. Let the jaw and tongue hang loose. Let the shoulders relax. Become aware of the torso, so the chest and belly and the back. Notice the breathing deep in the belly, the hips and pelvis resting on the chair. And all the way down to the tips of the toes. So now be aware of the whole body. And notice in your head where the thoughts are coming and going. And just notice them. And if you get lost in a few thoughts, then just become aware again and notice that you got lost. Now that's a new awareness. So no judgment. And even if you have a thought like, I'm not doing this right. Okay, there's another thought, just observe it. No matter what's going on inside, just observe. And I'll be quiet and let you guys breathe and relax. And if you start to tremble or get upset, just observe that as well. Okay, just look at it. And don't jump up or get scared or anything. Just sit there and observe. If you start trembling, fine, observe that. And everything will pass. So I'll be quiet now. I can just relax. Let the eyes relax. Let the hands relax. Stay aware and observe. Just a little bit longer. Notice whatever's going on. No judgments about it. If you notice judgmental thoughts, those aren't you. Just notice them. You're the one doing the watching. If you can stay present like this throughout your day, everything will start to work out in new and often interesting ways. Okay, now take a couple deep breaths. You can rub the hands together. It's kind of nice, and then put them over the eyes. Rub the face a little bit, and open up the eyes. So yeah, that's the basics, the body stuff, and then just sit still. Find that stillness. And it's not to be confused with whatever people call meditation and all this other kind of stuff. It's something so utterly simple. I think that's why many people miss it. The way this has gotten packaged, so many times is really confusing. So many different traditions and all that. That the root of this is just to sit there and observe whatever is going on, and to notice, at least for a few moments, that the thoughts are not you and that you're not in control of the thoughts. That's a form of freedom right there, to just notice that. Because then you can start to realize, man, these thoughts don't have my best interest in mind. And they'll lose their ability to make you do things. And so-called good thoughts, too, can create a big castle in the sky future that you think everything's leading up to, and then it doesn't go that way, and now how do you feel, you see? So there's the good thoughts too, and most of the beauty and joy in life comes from surprises where you didn't know what was going to happen next.
It stayed there for a long time.
I know, I almost lost track and thought oh, just keep going with this. But you can do that for 5 minutes when you wake up in the morning. Start with 5 minutes so you can actually do it. Set the bar low every morning, every night, and then expand it up to an hour, or however much time you want to give to it. It's going to make such a huge difference in the rest of your day. That alone, but if you do the face and shoulders and flops, do some of the undoing stuff, the full sessions too, it's going to make that presence thing so much easier and so much more delightful.
I mean, if you thought, and I'm speaking more to the audience, that was powerful, which that was, imagine doing a whole session, and then imagine doing a session every week with compounding. So, and I mean, I also think, just being honest, it's a real, you offer it at a very reasonable rate. For the month.
Yeah.
I think it's affordable. It's consistent. It's a great group. There's no belief system. There's no reason why people shouldn't want to sign up. So.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's worth checking out for a month.
Right.
It's more than just a single session, but to experience the highs and lows of it, and to experience the transcendence of those highs and lows and your identification with them. A month is enough to know if it's something you want to continue with. Yeah.
And if you're doing face and shoulders and some of the exercises daily with those sessions, it really compounds over time. So, at the end of the day, I think this sense of presence is the opposite of our trauma pattern, tying it kind of into the beginning, right? As the tensions melt, it's easier to operate from a totally new being or new personality or new sense of self. So, yeah, this was great, man. So, anyone watching, we'd love to have you all join us on the weeklies. And I think your sessions, those one-on-ones that you're offering, I guess if you guys private message or email Garrett, those are available through the end of the year.
Yeah, and I just met with a cool guy today. Another guy jumped on the schedule, that we met up for half an hour, and he's going to check out some private sessions and probably jump on the weekly ones as well. So it's a nice, I kind of like meeting people individually first and working through some stuff, and then seeing them get some results, and then get into the weekly session. And then we have that other kind of secret private group, iTag. Lately we've been doing what I call transcendence gaming, but we've moved into like doing some role-playing gaming that's pretty fun ahead of time. So if people are interested, then I invite them into that private group. That's pretty much invite only, that group. A lot of similar, same people, but we kind of let that one go into different directions. Things like holy discipline. I don't know if you ever tried that, but it's kind of a cool way of cleaning your house. That has a lot of impact on other areas of your life if you do it properly. So we go into some cool things there too that it's just not time to get into here. But we could talk about that maybe on a stream, this holy discipline thing.
And I think it would be cool to have someone that comes to your iTags consistently hop onto and share what that's about.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I'd always forget when we're here, but we could write the group sometime when we're going live and just see who wants to jump on. There's a few folks there I think would be great to invite.
Billy would be fun to have on.
Yeah, and I worked with him in person many years ago, and he came to, I believe he came to my place in Portland, Oregon when I was there around 2013, and then again came to, I might be wrong about that, but he certainly came to California, Northern California, in like 2015 or so, and we did sessions in person and everything too. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
A lot of interesting stuff.
I got to hop off, but even though you're in Croatia, happy Thanksgiving, bro. Thankful for you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm preparing for American Thanksgiving for tomorrow. It should be really cool. Yeah, I'm excited.
Very cool. And to anyone watching, we'd love to have you on weeklies. So.
Yeah, get in touch, folks, and just try it out. See what it's like for yourself, and then stick around if you like it.
Cool. Alrighty.
All right, man. See you again soon. Yeah, I'm going to stick around, play a little music, and then go.
Right. Bye.
Thanks, Jonah. See you soon. Happy Thanksgiving. All right, so I think I can dispense with the headphones. I don't know that I need them when let me check the audio stuff here. And if you're on, you want to get on. If you're watching, you want to jump on and talk a little bit. We can do that. I'm going to mute myself so I cough. I want to do, but maybe I can still get a song out of myself. Play one of my favorites by the Pines. Underneath the woods, the ground is glowing. High behind that thin blue sky, the stars are slowly snowing. When the light hit the darkness, it set the world in motion. Somehow I found you on the shores of the aerial ocean. So hold on to me. So hold on to me. My heart is wrapped in rain. Warm blood runs through my weathered veins. I'm down on a highway under a murmuration of air. plains, when the light in your eyes as they parted the skies where we buried watches and wallets so low, and behold, we're all just silhouettes in the sunset. So hold on to me. So hold on to me. Try one more. Kind of reminds me of the undoing process. Well, I like to have a good time. Any of my friends will tell you. So if you confront me with stupidity, I'm doubly angry at you. And I say nip nap, it's all a trap, obis, and so is this. Whoa, whoa, to Haiti go and watch it all come down. Ding dong, a silly song, sure to say something's wrong. Smile a while, forget the bile, watch it all come down. So I become more lively to bury all of the ugly. Oh, person sometimes must be them bodies buried. And I say nip nap, it's all a trap, obis, and so is this. Whoa, whoa, to Haiti go, watch it all come down. Ding dong, silly song, sure to say something's wrong. Smile a while, forget the bile, watch it all come down. And I told the water, and an urchin poked me, and I must be godfather to anyone who will have me. Today was another day full of dread, but I never said I was afraid, 'cause dread and fear should not be confused. By dread I'm inspired, by fear I'm amused. I say nip nap, it's all a trap, bulbous, and so is this. Whoa, whoa, to Haiti go, watch it all come down. Ding dong, a silly song, sure to say something's wrong. Smile a while, forget the bile, watch it all come down. All right. Maybe that's all I got in me. Still feeling a little bit sick. Yeah, that's good for now. So I'll see you guys again soon. Another live stream. And as always, feel free to jump on. And always look forward to hearing from you guys. Enjoy.